Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hear2Listen podcast. So today we've got myself, we've got Max,
Easy.
we've got Adam,
Hey, Leon.
hey, and unfortunately we haven't got Jack here today, but we do have a special guest who is an estate agent, and I'll let him introduce himself. Who are we speaking to?
Hello, my name is Adam. To make things slightly more complicated for everyone.
Yeah, two Adams in the mix.
That's it.
That's right. I think we can make do with that. We're going to go Adam 1 and Adam 2, are we? Or just Adam and we'll just...
Bagsy Adam 1.
Oh, he's Bagsy'd already. Bagsy, is it Bugsy or Bagsy?
Bagsy, I thought.
Bugsy, I thought. What do you reckon, Leon?
Up to you, mate, up to you.
All right. Adam 2?
Adam 1, I think you won.
Adam 1. I won't be too difficult for you. I'll settle for either or.
Either or.
Yeah.
To be fair, you'll know if we're talking to you anyway, to be fair.
We're probably only going to be talking to you, so yeah, make it easier anyway.
So I think just wanted to start off really, just let us know what you do at the minute really within work.
No, absolutely. Well, I am, as you probably already just stated, an estate agent. I've worked within the industry for about 10 years now. I've worked in a variety of different locations, up and down the A1 corridor and parts of North London. Job consists of really at the moment is predominantly going out and valuing properties and progressing sales once they've had an offer accepted to completion. My role in the office is the office manager, so pretty intense.
Can I just ask, Adam, how long have you been back at work? Actually, did you ever
it's been a strange year for probably everyone, in all honesty, as you probably imagine. But I've been back since, would have been June time. I'm losing track of time already now. April, May, June. So it's been back end of June, I think, and about 10 weeks off from April. But yeah, it's been back since June.
Was it
been in the office
straight back into the usual sort of antics, or has it changed massively for yourself in that sort of line of work?
Yeah, well, I think it's been completely unprecedented times for everyone involved. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty with what was going to happen pre-lockdown for not just ourselves but everyone in general, really. So in all honesty, coming out the other side, it was a bit of an unknown and what was going to happen. But in all honesty, it's been an incredibly strong marketplace since returning.
Oh, really? That's
nice.
It's interesting.
So, what's it been like? I was just thinking, like, when you're showing clients around houses, like, what do you have to do? Because I can imagine that's a little bit weird.
Yeah, go on. I want to hear this too.
Yeah, well, it's a completely different process to what it was in that regard. I mean, the job itself is still exactly the same, but there's a number of precautions that we've got to take now, which we wouldn't have had to do pre-COVID. So everyone that we speak to prior to viewing a property has to do a COVID questionnaire effectively in regards to their health before we can show them round. And there's a series of things that have to take place on the valuation or the viewing itself as well. So we've got from the viewing perspective, everyone has to wear face mask now, which obviously is pretty compulsory doing most things. But of course, that's now compulsory on all viewings as well, and valuations.
Is it true, Adam? Sorry to jump in. Is it true that the viewers will only get 15 minutes to view a house since returning? Is that something? I read it on I think it's Forbes magazine. It was an article in Forbes.
Yeah. Again, I suppose it depends. That's the guidelines that we've been given from our company. So we are restricting time within the property to 15 minutes per viewing.
It's quite tight, isn't it? I know they have to, obviously, because 15 minutes, that's what they say, not to be too enclosed or with people that are not within your bubble for a longer period of time than 15 minutes, from what I've read as well. But yeah, how's that working out with people? You said that the market's like, you said doing really well at the moment, didn't you, since returning? In my mind, I thought it would have put a lot of people off wanting to get up and move, but that's literally surprised me to hear you say that actually the housing market, is doing really well at the moment. But I mean, I don't look into it too much, but it's good to hear, I suppose.
Yeah, is it because of the stamp duty, would you say? Like the stamp?
I think there's a combination of things, really. I think the stamp duty is certainly one aspect of it, which is certainly spurred the market on. I think there's also an element of, there's probably a lot of people that have been wanting to do the move throughout lockdown, and obviously there's been a sort of probably a 3 month gap when no one's been able to do anything either. So the natural flurry of people that would have moved within that period have had to hold off. So I think there's a combination of both things, really.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the stamp duty? So I just want to, just in case people are listening and don't know what the word stamp duty means, what's that all about, and what modifications have been made recently that makes it so attractive?
Yeah, so I mean, the stamp duty is obviously a sum of money that sadly people have to pay the tax man effectively when buying a property. They basically cut that up to £500,000 now, so there's no stamp duty involved for everyone bar investment buyers at the moment. They still have to pay a 3% stamp duty on whatever they're buying still. But for the vast majority of people out in the marketplace at the moment, that's quite a hefty saving, which is valid till next year. So it could save people up to thousands of pounds. So it's certainly an incentive worth taking advantage of.
Nice. So I've also saw a couple of articles that just come up on my Facebook feed, and it was just saying how is it the case that banks are offering out less money to sort of people at the moment because of Corona?
Yeah. So this is probably the counter to the marketplace being really good, which we are starting to see a adverse effect on everything at the moment. But there are some challenges with mortgage providers. That's been a challenge since day one, really, but it seems to be changing continuously. The banks pretty much bar one or two lenders, of which I don't think either were one of your high street ones. They all got rid of 5% options, so they were completely wiped off the face of the earth in terms of being available for first-time buyers or anyone, come to think about it. The vast majority of 10% options as well, loan to value, disappeared as well, and there's only a few options from that front, and most lenders moved up to a 15% loan to value, which was required to be able to use them as a lender. So that's been, as you can imagine, challenging for first time buyers in particular, I'd imagine, being limited on what their deposit is and what they're able to save up, having this hurdle of now needing to find a load more money to be able to make it work.
So there's a lot of things that have changed that are going to go against these first-time buyers we're talking about.
Yeah, same. So for like 5%, 10%.
Yeah, so that's all been gone. But I was going to ask a question actually about some of the schemes, because I looked at, again, a little post on the internet, and there was the help to buy, there's right to buy, right to acquire, shared ownership, people with disabilities, older people, shared equity schemes, starter home schemes, and then next steps. Is any of those changed? Because this is all for first-time buyers, and there was schemes to help get people on the ladder and stuff. You've said about the percentages changing and not being there anymore to help. I don't really understand too much.
So I think what he's talking about is, so to have like a 5% deposit.
Yeah.
So let's say if the house was 100 grand, you had 5 grand, you could get on it. But at the moment, the banks aren't offering, so you'd have to have.
So there's changes. That's what I mean. So that's going to have a knock-on effect. Is that going to have a knock-on effect to these schemes that could potentially be out there for first-time buyers? Because ideally, our target audience is going to be young people, and we're going to want to give some young people ideas and tips to maybe what they need to be looking out for, what they need to be saving for, or what they can do to potentially get on the ladder. The reason why the Next Step scheme caught my eye was because it was saying that we done a podcast, didn't we? And I think that's why I think Leon actually decided to get yourself on. I think it was podcast 11, Property Talk.
Yeah.
We didn't sort of go into too much detail, and I literally spent about 10 minutes searching last night, and I see that there was so much different information coming through. Again, I can't get my head around any of it, so I thought if I was a young person getting into that or looking to get into a property,
what scheme would you choose, maybe?
Yeah, basically, what's still out there and what's still actually like beneficial to actually sort of entertain, I suppose.
Yeah, so
that is a very tricky question to answer to a large degree, because the options are changing so frequently. I know there's still the springboard mortgages that are still available comfortably for first time buyers, so they're basically effectively a guarantor from family. I know there's still options from that side of things, but the deposit situation is going to be an issue for everyone, sadly, at the moment, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. Obviously, there's still going to be incentives on newer builds and things like that. With reference to first-time buyers and the Help to Buy schemes, that naturally the borrowing amount is going to be less than full ownership and things like that with other properties, but the same situations are still going to arise with first-time buyers as there will be for everyone, sadly.
So that's cool. I mean, just to sort of move on a little bit. So with people with renting, I know some estate agents work with like people that rent the houses out and stuff like that. Is that something that your company does?
We do deal with rentals. I must admit, I don't myself, but we predominantly a sales only office where we work. So, but we do have a rentals department that do cover the rentals.
The reason I asked that because at the moment they're not allowed to sort of kick people out of the houses. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So are you getting people that are sort of like not paying and just basically refusing to leave? Yeah.
Squatting.
I haven't. In all honesty, from speaking to the rentals team, there hasn't been an influx of issues from that side of things. If I'm being all honest, not that I've been made aware of, but I suspect the longer it goes on, and while still people are on furlough, and obviously there's a lot of uncertainty with people's jobs at the moment, there's every chance that could be a problem going forward.
So are you saying there's people out there?
Yes.
They're just not paying because they know they can't be evacuated? Because I've been
paying
paying every single month, right? Hang on a minute, I'm missing out on something. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, no. So
I can actually see that happening. To be fair, especially, but how could they? What, all because of the pandemic? Is that why they're not being evacuated?
You're not allowed to make anyone homeless basically at the minute. So if you couldn't afford to pay your rent, they couldn't kick you out. I think until like January or something like that.
Oh, but they will do it eventually. Yes.
Yeah.
But still, give you a little bit more of an extension. Like, you can stay there for a little bit, but January comes, you can enjoy Christmas. Boom, you're out.
But if you're struggling, and let's say you missed 1 month's payment, and you're thinking, well, if I can just long this out till January, and then I'll just move out in January, and I'll be safe. Like you could just have that mindset. So I was just wondering if people sort of going with that mindset where they don't have to pay anything really.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like it's a problem.
Yeah, it potentially could be. There could be loads of different situations, I suppose.
On the subject of the pandemic as well, I was wondering, Adam, with one of the assumptions might be, and perhaps it's quite likely, is that people are going to have a lot less money, that people are going to be losing their jobs, people might not be able to, pay their mortgages, pay their rents, etc. How are you as a sort of company, but I'm also curious about the industry as a whole, preparing for what might be an inevitable situation?
Yeah, I think you have to kind of take it as it comes to a large degree. I mean, it's an industry that's always changing. There's always been recessions. I mean, there's talk of recession. We've gone into a recession already from what the media is saying. So there's always boundaries and the hurdles you need to get over. In any marketplace, I mean, you kind of have to make the most of the good times and make the most of them. So it counterbalances the slower and more static months. So again, it's from that point of view. I mean, I suppose there is an element of the bubble is going to burst inevitably at some point, where it's been so chaotic since everyone's return. It's been almost unmanageable in how busy it's been in terms of people wanting to sell, people wanting to go out and view. I think it's inevitable there's going to be a burst of the bubble at some point.
So you think it will just sort of almost have a collapse in the housing industry?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's hard to say really, because it's always. I mean, there's been times where, I mean, you going into this lockdown. I mean, everyone said the market's going to be terrible coming out of it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. So a lot of companies made decisions to let people go going into lockdown because they didn't want to be part of the furlough scheme. So there's a lot of people that lost their jobs in this industry leading into that. And obviously on the basis that they assumed the market was going to be flat and absolutely hopeless after it. And obviously it was quite the opposite. So it's always impossible to predict the future, as obvious as that sounds. But there's so many contributing factors which could change that. For example, government put in various schemes like the stamp duty holiday. So there's, I mean, anything could change at any point to affect the marketplace.
It sounds like it's a very reactionary field then, that it's less of a field that prepares for things and more about very quick to act when things do change. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to, because I say you don't know what's around the corner. You have to make the most of the good situations, and there's naturally it's an industry where there's times of the year where it quietens down anyway. I mean, between Christmas and New Year's, nothing happens, so it's static at that point. School holidays are renowned for being quieter whilst people are away, so there's times of the year that you account for being slower. Obviously, this is a bit of a different scenario, but it is one of those industries where you've got to roll with the busier times, make the most of it, and sort of slog on and do your best you can.
Yeah, it helps you get through those quieter times. It's similar to the building trade, because when I used to be in the building trade, it's very similar. When you said about Christmas being quiet, like no one wanted house renovations or housework done over the Christmas period. So we'd make sure that in the busy times, we used to make the money, make the most of it, like you say, which would then see us through those quiet times. I think that's obviously across the board in different businesses and stuff. That can be quite challenging, especially with the pandemic and stuff like that. In my mind, I'm thinking, like, because I know a few people locally that have multiple properties, like they rent them out and this, that and the other. And one of the guys I was talking to is actually a family member. He sold up 3 of them, or tried to sell 3 of them at the beginning, or when it first started coming to surface, shall we say. Just think, I don't know what his motive was or anything. Like my dad told me, he's just like, yeah, he's getting rid of some. He's sort of, I don't know if he got scared, got a little bit shook maybe, but just started. Did that happen? Did loads of people try putting up properties for sale? I'm talking more businesses, because I think a lot of companies realised that actually they were no longer in need of the office space or the building that they were using, whether they owned it or rented it or whatever. And because of the pandemic, when they realised they could do everything from home or using laptops, Teams and Google Meets and all the rest of it, they actually didn't need that building. So was there like an influx of actual people trying to sell at the beginning, or maybe during, but weren't able to? Or
well, I mean, I think a lot of people's circumstances definitely changed. There's obviously a lot more motive and reason behind people's moving beyond just the stamp duty holiday. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that are able to work from home now, and that's kind of affected where they need to be and why they need to be there. So we're finding a lot of people are, not just from people that have got portfolios, but from a personal perspective for people, they are able to work more remotely now, from home and everything else. So, yeah, there's an absolute variety of reasons why people are considering the move and what works for them and their family now.
So, Adam, I've got a friend that he's looking to buy a place, but I'll speak to him at the weekend. He said he wants to wait because he believes the house prices are going to drop over the next few months. So do you think that's right? Or if you was to buy a house, would you buy one now or would you wait for a few months?
$1 million question. I mean, I again, it isn't. I think you have to buy a house. I mean, if you're buying it for yourself, you have to buy it because it's right for you and the time's right. And houses are always an investment that are never going to tumble to the point where it's pointless and you're losing huge amounts of money. Again, I can't see that happening. If I was looking to buy right now, there's nothing that would stop me from buying now, personally.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, you don't know what's around the corner. I mean, this could all event into the marketplace continuing to go up. I mean, when I first got into this industry, I was working over in Enfield for quite some time, and the prices were absolutely bonkers there, and everyone was going, I'm not going to buy now, I'm not going to buy now, because the price is just excessive. And you fall the clocks 10 years later and they've gone up another £250,000, and you think, well, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I think you have to base your move and you're wanting to buy a property for your reasons and not because of what the marketplace is might or might not do.
I think that's some good advice. If the house is right for you, just just buy it if it's right for you and it works.
Yeah, I mean, you're not
Get
going to
it.
say don't, because you make your living from selling
Yeah.
houses. Let's be honest.
Yes.
Come on,
Yeah.
I do still
Well,
great. No, yeah, I fully appreciate that.
But well,
But
very
it
careful.
makes sense. But for someone like me, it's never been burning inside of me to own my own house. So I've rented since I left school. I left school 16, a little bit earlier than most would, and then went into work and all that sort of stuff. So I was very independent. I moved out a year later, and I've rented ever since. I am with the Grand Union at the moment, the council, and I'm in a property that is got acquire to buy. So the previous property I was in, I had right to buy. And then when I went to the council office and was filling out all the paperwork and the new contracts and the tenancy and stuff, the lady said at Grand Union that I've got I can acquire to buy. She's like, but please don't ask me what that means, because I've had to say this to the third person today. You're the third person I've said this to, and I genuinely don't know what it means. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, if you don't know what it means, how do I know what it means? But I still haven't had an answer. But I've seen it pop up again on a website this morning, and it was like, acquire. You've got the right to buy it and acquire to buy. Could you give me a little insight on that, if possible?
Yeah, I mean, you tend basically the right to buy was very much sort of going back to sort of 90s and pre-90s with the council properties, and they tended to offer a much heftier discount on what you could buy them at.
Yeah, 40% cheaper I got offered.
Yes. Now, the right to acquire is they're basically trying. The reason they introduced it was trying to retain their property to a large degree, which is you get a discount still, but it's nowhere near as lucrative for yourself.
Damn.
Sadly.
I mean, a discount's a discount, but I'm genuinely, so the last property, I think it was valued at 98,000. It was only a ground floor masonette, and they offered it to us for 40% that price. That is, I genuinely didn't believe the letter when receiving it, and it was like, I didn't go for it. And people often say to me, you are a fool. Why didn't you do that? Because it's a perfect premises to rent out. Yeah. But there's obviously loopholes and stuff that you can and can't do when doing that. Right to buy, when making that transition. You have to keep the property for 5 years. You can't work on it or renovate for 3 years. So there's a couple of little hurdles that they put in. But I know a lot of people that have bought ex-council houses, like you say, next to nothing, and then 5 years later, boom, the house price increases. Like you said, it may dip at times, but am I right in saying that it's always going to be an investment? Like, I had a wise man say to me a fair few years back, he's like, Max, if you want to invest in anything, invest in property. Property will be and will always be like having gold bars. That's what he said. He said, look, it's like gold. It's just going to rise. That you might dip here and there, but actually it's an investment that genuinely the chances of losing out on are very slim. And my brother done that very thing. And 3 years later, he's I don't know what he's on top of his mortgage, but he's definitely come away with a few quid, especially when he sells up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. I mean, again, this goes back to what your savings doing right now. So, I mean, if you look at your ISA right now, if you've got one, I mean, mine's at 0.01 or something. I've got quite a few £1,000s in my ISA, and I'm seeing about 36p a month off of it. So it's when you look at it like that, or you could do that, or you could pay off your mortgage and have more equity in your house over a certain time frame. So there's no money in savings. Unless you probably look at offshore stuff, but I mean, in terms of the rates within the UK at the moment, you're not going to make any money off the savings account. So, I mean, I think you're absolutely right in regards to property, and there's money in it, whether it be now or further down the line. You're certainly not going to lose out.
Definitely should have bought it, shouldn't I?
I don't know.
I didn't want to say anything, but yeah.
But the house you're in now, Max, you wouldn't have got that. And I've been around your house, and it's so fresh. It's so nice.
Just to paint a little picture, Adam, we spent 8 years. I've got 2 young kids. My little boy's now 12, my little girl's 9. But we spent 10 years, say, even, in this ground floor masonette, which was actually really nice. Nice size, big double bedrooms, 2 double bedrooms, nice back garden. It was ground floor. Obviously, you had people living above, which was a bit of a pain, especially for the last couple of years we was there. But actually, it was really nice and comfortable. But it wasn't until we actually got into a house we realised we'd been living on the ground floor for the last 10 years. It was like, so this is what it feels like to have stairs. It's amazing. But yeah, I know what you're saying, Leon.
Yeah, house you
I
want now
wouldn't
is
be
nice.
where I am
Yeah.
if I did that.
So, you know,
move,
had to be right for you, like Adam
there
said.
we go.
Mate.
Yeah, no, it was meant to be. But I wanted to talk more about. So, what have you just signed up for, Leon? What
So
are
I've
you?
got shared ownership.
Yeah.
So I actually moved mid-pandemic.
Yeah.
So that was long. So the best way to describe it. So we were supposed to move at like end of March and didn't move till end of May because they like stopped everyone from moving at one point. But for me, like best way. So we was looking to move to. I wanted to stay in Biggleswade, and we was looking at like prices and stuff. And there's a flat that come up on King's Reach, which is a new estate in Biggleswade, and that literally costs more to get on the same scheme than a 2-bed house would in Gamlingay, with a garden, driveway, everything like that. So it was a bit of a no-brainer because obviously Corinne was pregnant. But I would have liked to have saved a bit more, but obviously Corinne got pregnant, so we had to just sort of rush the
Hang on a
process.
minute. You got Corinne pregnant.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you shouldn't just get pregnant. It takes two to tango. Let's
Yeah, you're right.
come on.
So yeah, we had to sort of rush it, but it was at the time it's the right house for us, and like we couldn't be happier with what we got. And in about 5 to 10 years' time, we can hopefully get our forever home.
I
and,
actually
move where we wanna go.
fully respect you for doing that, because I genuinely couldn't believe when you said you were still going through with it during that pandemic. I was shocked. I was like, have you looked into it properly? I'm like, you've done a bit of research. Do you know that this is it ever going to happen? Like, I couldn't believe you were still up for it, but you did it.
We didn't know that either, but like my missus Corinne, she literally was so ready to move out, but we didn't know whether we was going to be moving next week, like a month, or it's all going to be called off. We just didn't know, and literally we just got an email.
You was in too deep by then.
Yeah,
surely you'd already paid deposits and stuff like that.
Hadn't paid it, but like the mortgage agreement had been signed or whatever, and like all the paperwork was set. So we were literally just waiting for an email to say, "Oh, you got your moving date," and it was. We didn't think we was going to get it at some points, and then luckily, we just got it and moved straight in as soon as possible.
Going back to what you were saying earlier about like the differences in valuations, I wanted to bring you in on this, Adam, because there's something that fascinates me, like how something can be worth so much in one area but worth so little in another. I live in Milton Keynes at the moment, and I've got a lot of young friends that have been looking to buy their own place in Milton Keynes because they've lived in Milton Keynes but now can't afford to live in the place that they grew up because it's so expensive to live there. And what they're doing is going sort of 20 minutes north, east, south, west, and they're getting a bargain. Do you know what I mean? So what kind of things dictate the value of properties?
Close
Oh,
to
it's
London, isn't it?
always comes down to supply and demand, really. And it's the same with anything in any industry. It's the same with the housing market as it is with anything else in life. Pricing is dictated by who wants to be there, how many people want to be there, and what the interest levels are in within a location. A lot of it always stems from major cities, so you'll always find that there's always a ripple effect. So obviously, as London gets more expensive, people start moving out, and that will gradually get further out and until it makes sense for people. So you can always pretty much guarantee what's going to happen with pricing as major cities change in pricing. That's where it always starts from, and that's where it ripples back from.
Up until I asked that, I just assumed it was like what dictates a nice place to live. You know, Milton Keynes, big old snow dome, you know, lakes everywhere, forests, all that sort of stuff. You know, low building levels so that you know, great sunsets and all that sort of, just a nice place to live, it seemed. But there are other factors, I guess.
I always
into
thought
that.
it was just literally the further you are away from London, the cheaper it is. But it sort of is, I suppose.
I think
it has that effect.
That's because we're on the A1 that goes up to London. So like in our heads,
it's like a timeline.
My friendship group, like from when I was younger, is sort of like slowly moving up from like away from London up the A1. So it's a bit mad. So Adam, we haven't got too long because I don't want to keep you too much longer. Also, Adam,
I got to finish on that probably. Yeah.
So he had a question yesterday that I thought was a pretty good question.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get him to
So
ask it.
to give you a bit of context, Adam, I don't know how long you been in the industry first.
Well, about 10 years.
10 years, okay. So might be a bit before your time, but about 20 years ago, I'm in my 40s, and I remember watching a TV program, and it was like maybe a game show or something like that, and one of the contestants might have said something like, I'm an estate agent, and the audience went boo, you know, and I've never quite understood why that is. And here's an opportunity to ask why you think that might be. I don't know if it's because it was during a recession or what. I don't know, 20 years ago, but is it that estate agents have got that kind of reputation, or
it's not a traffic
what's
warden.
that all about? Yeah, the whole audience were like, boo, what is that about? Is it because you earn loads of money or what?
There's I think the industry on the whole has certain places give the industry a bad name. And I mean, I've worked for one of them. There's some real sharks out there, if I'm being brutally honest with you.
Can you name them?
that don't do the job right and don't do it properly.
Examples, just to give a bit of context. What do you mean?
Again, I'll have to be careful what I say here, but there are places that do it wrong. In terms of like really wrong to the point where they shouldn't even be in operation.
We wouldn't want our listeners to be heading to those places. So what do they sound like?
So maybe not the names of the company, but what method would they do that would be so wrong?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I said I've worked for smaller independents, I've worked for corporate world, and I've worked for larger independents. And you tend to find that the larger companies that they will do things by the book, how it should be, because they've got a reputation to keep hold of, and it is a business where your reputation and what you do for customers is going to continue to generate your business longer term, and that's pretty much where I've focused my job and career, is within companies that want to do well. But my first insight into the industry was corrupt. If I'm being brutally honest with you, I left there after being there for about a year. It was a completely different insight to what I thought it was going to be like. But there is some horrible examples where they deal with backhanders, and that is still a thing in certain locations, I would imagine. Especially as you get more towards sort of central London and London, where the property prices are so steep. But there are some real bad examples of how to do a job, and I think the bad name has escalated from companies and individuals like that operate their business like that, where they lose focus of what's important.
Mad.
It's easily done though. A few bad brushes in the bin or whatever they call it. I don't know. I think I just made that saying up. It can happen. It's similar. Like the first thing that comes to mind is like being tarnished with the same brush sort of thing. Like white van man, for example. I used to be a white van man. Everyone used to think I would drive like a lunatic, or I couldn't drive because I'm a white, or I didn't care because I'm a white van man, and they're people to look out for on the road. But not every person that drives a white van is the same, and that's what sort of point I'm getting to.
I think when I heard the booze, I think I just made my own assumptions about it, and I thought it might be to do with one of these industries that is like, in quotes, a necessary evil, like, I don't know, funerals. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's like, oh, it's so expensive, but you don't really hear them get booed.
I was going to say, I've never heard
it's a necessary.
I thought you was going to say you see like a funeral party.
I just thought it was something to do with that, where it was just sort of a thing that people have to use, that they got to pay, more than they're probably preferring to pay to get the action done. That's what I assumed back then.
I think there's certainly an element of that as well, but I think from a selling a house perspective, I think people, and this is obviously where the whole influx of purple bricks has started to rise from. But yeah, I think the industry, I mean, it was
purple. Sorry, Adam. Purple Bricks. I've heard of it.
What's that mean?
It's a company, isn't it? Is it Purple Bricks? Is that not a company or a estate agent or something?
Yes, online.
Yeah, so they're an online only effectively service, which sort of sprung around the last sort of 5 years. Really, they started becoming. I mean, I'm sure most people have seen the adverts on
I've seen it.
The TV. They seem to pop up continuously, but I think the other part is the industry was always. I think it's a bit like double glazing. I think that's probably the double glazing salesman is kind of where people pitched estate agents for a long time, in terms of being a bit forceful in their sales tax and what they wanted to do, and like I say, probably a long time ago, probably overpaid for what they were getting or should have got.
Let's just spark something. Sorry, Adam. Has anybody that you've worked with or within your organisation been trained in NLP? Because I did hear talk of that on Radio 2. It was about 2-3 years ago that a lot of people in sales and sales business and stuff was actually going to be trained in NLP. Is that something that you've ever heard of, or do you know that salesmen or estate agents have done that? Could just be a conspiracy.
Don't know about that part, being brutally honest with you, but okay. I know from a company perspective where I work now, there is quite a lot of training they do. There is sort of like a city and guild type thing that they sort out for everyone that joins the company. And there's a lot of basic stuff that they have to go through in terms of literacy and maths. So there's a basic knowledge of that sort of stuff. Well, it's not even basic, it's a little bit more advanced, but there's stuff that you need to do before they even employ you within our company. I know there's others that don't do that. So there's different levels of the caliber of person they employ from one company to another.
Cool. Nice. So Adam, number one, I think thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Can I be
today.
Really rude and just one more quick question? This is a real quick question.
We always try to wrap.
No, please. I just want your opinion, Adam, because you are in the market. What would you go for? You're buying your house, new build, old build. What are you saying? New build, old build? That's just a quick question, surely. What's your personal preference?
Right. I mean, I live in a new build, but I would buy an older property personally.
My man, that's the same as me. Unfortunately, I've got a new build as well.
So I'd much rather have the garden, space for the kids and everything over the...
yeah, 100%.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think Adam wanted just to finish off, just to let you guys know where to listen to us on.
Yeah, a couple of little announcements. We are now on Pocket Casts. I've never heard of it. Maybe there's people out there that do. We're also on Radio Public, and we are all on Google Podcasts, which is a new one. That feels like one that we all know. You know what I mean? That must be where people get most of their podcasts. We're working on iTunes now, but it's incredibly complicated. Like the others were dead easy. But yeah, so Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Google Podcasts, just do a search for Here to Listen and you'll find us there as well. So new platforms.
Nice.
So yeah, thank you again, Adam. And thanks everyone for listening. We've been here to listen.